Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to my Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Thank you.
Welcome to the party, pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 158. I'm talking to Larry Sanger, who is one of the co-founders of Wikipedia, although he now calls himself an ex-founder.
Yes.
We're going to talk about that and how he got into Wikipedia and how he got to know Jimmy Wales and some other things, and where he thinks Wikipedia went wrong. How are you, Larry?
I'm doing pretty well, so it's good to be with you.
Yes, and I definitely have my allergies going on here, but we'll make this work. So, first of all, how did you get started with Wikipedia?
Well, I didn't get started with Wikipedia. I started Wikipedia. I got started with BOMIS, which was
BOMIS. I thought it was BOMIS, but yeah.
Well, that's how they pronounced it. Doesn't exist any longer, but that was the company of which Jimmy Wales was the CEO. He was one of three partners, and he hired me in 2000 to start a project that he called newpedia.com. And again, it was just a domain name. He hired a programmer for me to work with, and I worked with that guy for, well, I think less than a year actually. And it was while I was, working on that project that, Jimmy Wales and I were well agreed that there were problems with the production of Newpedia. It was just too slow, and it didn't involve a wide enough assortment of people. So we added basically a new content stream, or that's what we thought of it at first, for Newpedia, the Newpedia wiki. But the people who were involved in Newpedia were mostly academics, highly credentialed, and they didn't want to have anything to do with like this weird website that anybody can edit. That sounds like a non-starter, as what I would say the vast majority of them thought. That is the PhDs, the people we call the peer reviewers and editors. And so Wikipedia we had to choose a name for it, a separate name. So I came up with the name Wikipedia, which was launched on the January 15th. That was just like 5 days after there was like a public exposure of the website to the Newpedia people, and 15 days after I had the idea for a wiki encyclopedia, after a friend of mine, Ben Kovitz, told me about wiki software and what he had been doing with it and so forth. And it's like, wow, this could be used to solve this problem that we're struggling with. And Jimmy Wales, he didn't want to give any more money to the project, because it wasn't a money-making project, at least not yet. It was intended to be. So actually, Wikipedia started as wikipedia.com. It was not a nonprofit as it is now. It was going to be funded by ads. So that was Jimmy's business model for it.
So it was going to be funded by ads. Wow. I believe was Tim Shell his partner back then?
That's right. Yep,
Yeah.
he was. And then Michael, what was his last name? I forget. Another one, a silent partner, I guess, that Jimmy had worked with back in Chicago. But yeah, I knew Tim Schill better than I knew Jimmy. Jimmy sort of was standoffish And it was not infrequent that it's like hard to get a hold of him. Um, but Tim was a friend. We'd socialized a fair bit.
Yeah, that's true. And of course, Jimmy was still trading futures and options in Chicago at the time, I believe, because that's where I think he made most of his money.
Yeah. Well, I can't confirm that. I don't know what all he was doing with his time in those few short years. His his title was the uh, CEO of Bombus, but Bombus had a lot of different projects going on, and so he had a lot of brands in the fire. Um, Wikipedia was only one of them, of course.
Okay, so the plan was to go have Wikipedia funded by ads. What changed there? What happened? This was all starting around what 2000.
Yeah, well, I mean, Nupedia started in 2000, basically as soon as I started working on it, and it, Wikipedia that got a start in 2001. As I say, January 15th. Um, I'm sorry, I forgot the question now, though.
So what happened that made it go from
Right.
he wanted it supported by ads to being a
Yes.
nonprofit?
So the answer is, in short, that um, uh, there was a couple of different things. First of all, the bottom fell out in the ad market. Um, they the internet had been flush with cash, right, for several years, which is actually one of the reasons why Bombas had any money at all. Um, they actually had a contract with, I think it was Google, but I'm not sure. Maybe it was
Yes.
like yeah, you think so? Okay. I thought Go
I
also.
don't know. I just I do remember. This was about the time of the .com bomb.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, the Nasdaq peaked in early 2000, and I know Bombas actually meant because online marketing is superior.
Yes.
BOMIS. Yeah.
Yes. So oh, is that I don't know about that.
Yes.
I was never told any such any that sounds like a backronym to me, but whatever.
Maybe
Maybe.
so. That's just what I remember.
Okay. So um, let's see here. Basically, the dot-com boom turned to bust, and essentially they had hired on at least a half a dozen people. I apparently was the last of the new hires to be laid off. Um, and what they told me was that they were trying to sell ads for Nupedia and Wikipedia, as if that would make any difference. I have been told by, well, let's just say unnamed insiders later that that Jimmy Wales, and in particular, wanted to get rid of me, um, and just pursue Wikipedia uh, on his. I'm not going to say on his own, because he, even after that, he didn't do that much personally with Wikipedia, not for a while. No, he basically didn't want my influence over it anymore. That's, I think, is fair to say. Um, Now, on the other hand, that's not what they told me. Um, and that's not what I was led to believe. I was led to believe that they were selling ads, but I have again been told that they nobody ever tried to sell ads. Right, so yeah, it was kind of weird. Um, So, but whatever. Um, uh, what happened then is there was a fork. Uh, the the as soon as we announced that we were in fact trying to sell ads, or at least that's was the claim. It was a public claim that Jimmy Wales made. The basically the mostly left-leaning um, uh, people working on the Spanish um, Wikipedia, uh, they they had an objection to that, and they said, "Okay, we're going to fork," which was their right under the license. Um, so they did, and the idea is that uh, as a result, um, um, well, I because they had reduced the amount that they paid me. The result was that I basically quit, and not just quit. I wanted to have nothing to do with them. I wasn't going to devalue my my labor. Um, so yeah, and then basically they were able to say, no, we're not going to run ads after all. You can come back. And eventually, I think after some years, the Spanish Wikipedia, the people behind that fork, were brought back in. So that's the long story, anyway. I don't tell
So
that
that
story too
became the
much.
Wikipedia that we know today.
Yeah, not exactly. Yeah, it changed quite a bit over the years in various ways. Back in the early days, even as late as I would say 2005, um, there were a lot of people on board who were still committed to the idea of neutrality, which is no longer the case. I mean, Wikipedia has really gone overboard with their commitment to basically what I would describe as the establishment point of view, as opposed to a neutral point of view, which is what they claim. So yeah, it took time for that to develop, and for the left essentially to execute fully their march through that particular institution, which is exactly what happened. The I mean, our first our first publicity actually came from two extremely well-connected um, establishment publications: the New York Times and the MIT. What was it called? Technology Review. And yeah, interesting that we were on their radar so early. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Apparently also, is it true? He said, Jimmy, I believe, wrote somewhere that he actually got called by the New York Times on the 11th of September, 2001.
That could be. That sounds
Well,
right.
he says, I can't believe they had time to call me on that day.
Uh-huh. Right. Interesting.
Yeah,
Yes. Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I was amazed. That's for
yeah,
sure. But I believe they talked to both of us in that call. Or not in that call, but in that for that story.
yeah. So you were no longer involved. So basically you built the foundation. So you were a programmer who kind of built the foundation for it.
No, I wasn't the programmer at all. No,
Okay, you were a programmer.
I
Okay.
was responsible for basically leading the community.
Okay.
Yeah, I was essentially, I mean, Jimmy has called me like the editor in chief. That is not the title that I ever had. Um, I never had such a title, never claimed such a title, or even the
Yeah.
authority that would imply. Um, it I called myself the chief organizer or the chief instigator. Um, but on the other hand, Jimmy also is on the record, basically um, saying that essentially, now that Larry is leaving us, um, that means there's really no one in charge exactly, implying that I had been in charge, which was to a certain extent, in a certain way, true. So
Yeah. So what was your background going into this? You weren't a programmer, or you were an editor, or what?
no, no, I wasn't a programmer. I mean, I learned some programming when I was a kid, not at anything like a professional level. And I learned some more actually when I was there working for Bombas. I learned a little bit more. And after that, now I'm kind of a programmer. I have actually done some programming for work. Um, but no, my background, I was a PhD student, and I actually got my PhD in philosophy um, when I was at working for Bombas. In fact, Jimmy Wales gave me a raise after I got my PhD. That was like his incentive to me, in fact, for finishing it and thereby making the the leadership of the project a little more credible, I suppose. That was the thinking.
Okay. So so where do you think Wikipedia started to go wrong, and how did that happen?
Well, it's a good question, and there's many different aspects to a full answer to the question, but I don't have time to get into all of the aspects. Um, Suffice to say that there were a lot of left-wing students, or what appeared to be left-wing students, getting involved. Now, that's not unusual. Even back then, most of the internet was left-wing because most educated people were left-wing, and most uh, yeah, basically, that had a lot to do with it, and the fact that, but but there was something weird about it, right? Um, there were, shall we say, machinations, people who were trolling, but they had a lot of time to do the trolling, if you know what I'm saying. Um, and essentially driving away people that they didn't like, essentially, causing all kinds of problems. Um, and that was something that happened very early on. And ultimately, you could say that that I am one of the people that they drove away. This is not to say that the involvement of the trolls is what drove me away. It is actually the failure of Jimmy Wales to deal with the trolls that drove me away. I thought it was weird because so now just as a little background, I remember your name from like old 1990s email lists. Is this the same Chris Baker that was involved in some I don't know, MDOP perhaps?
Oh,
And
yes.
yes, okay.
Yes, I was.
Okay.
I was on the MDOP.
So then you
Moderated
understand.
discussion of objectivist philosophy for those who weren't around then.
Yes,
Email group, which was founded by Jimmy Wales in 1991. Uh,
exactly. And that's actually how I got to know Jimmy Wales myself, through that group. Although I met him face to face a couple of times, 2 times. Uh, Once as I was passing through on my way to visit my dying uncle in 1995, and later at an Ayn Rand conference that we both happened to be attending. So as you
Yes.
know very well yourself, then, so Jimmy um, was he certainly appeared to be an objectivist. He certainly appeared to be um, opposed to, shall we say, the left. But no, that's not how he acted when it came to dealing with these these people who had essentially descended upon um, Wikipedia. He just basically let them do whatever the hell they wanted. It was very strange to me, and I think you're one of the relatively few people out there who might have known him somewhat back then, and therefore can understand why it would seem strange.
Well,
Uh,
my impression is that he's just kind of allowed Wikipedia to be run by whoever shows up. I mean, so
exactly.
if a bunch of right wingers showed up and they drove out the lefties, would he do something if that happened?
I don't know, but
I mean, it seems like to me Wikipedia is just run by whoever shows up.
yeah, that's
Is that
certainly what
true?
it appeared to be.
Yeah.
And that I also is the the impression that Jimmy Wales himself gave. In other words, when he described his policy, it was that. But
Yeah.
they were pushing a lot and hard a left wing point of view on many articles, and he didn't back me up when I tried to enforce the neutrality policy. Um, so, like, he actually compared it to a good cop, bad cop scenario.
Yeah.
So I was the bad cop and he was the good cop. And he wasn't really, as far as that goes, policing those people at all. They actually became some of those people um, became, I guess you could say, uh, part of the leadership of the nascent organization. So yeah.
Yeah. Well. On that note, too, though, he also has refused to censor Wikipedia at the behest of the Chinese, whereas many other tech companies were doing that. This was back in 2005 or 2006.
Hmm. Right, I believe it.
So at least it sounds like to me he's just kind of let for better or for worse, he's just kind of let the kid. You could say he's let the inmates run the asylum.
That's actually the words that I used to describe the situation at the time. The inmates have taken over the asylum.
Yeah.
So
So do you think any of this really comes from the? Do you think the left wing bias comes from the top down in any way, or do you think it's just, like I said, could for
I
example,
don't know.
let's say Andrew Torba and a bunch of other people got together and said, okay, we're going to take over Wikipedia. Could
Uh,
they do that?
no way. No way.
I mean,
Um,
if they signed up enough accounts and got enough people
yeah,
on the
no, it
site.
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I think at this point it's controlled by intelligence agencies, probably. Um, why wouldn't it be? Is the way I think about it, right? I mean, the world of intelligence now is all about changing and shaping public opinion, and Wikipedia is a way to do that, right? Um, and th- let's just say if I don't have any specific evidence that that's the case, I just have reasoning, right?
Yeah.
I have the evidence, of course, that there was editing going on from Langley, Virginia, but that's like really neither here nor there, to be quite honest. Um, that that is something that one would have expected, and it doesn't entail that it was at that time somehow under the control of the CIA. I wouldn't even claim that. In fact, I don't claim that now. I don't claim that it's like run by the CIA. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. I don't know how it works. I have no idea how the intelligence world works. I mean, maybe I should learn more. But whatever. The point is that we know enough. There is enough known anyway in general about the concerns and the operations of intelligence throughout the world now, that it's all about the control of the narrative. And what greater tool for controlling the narrative than Wikipedia?
Oh
So
yeah, Wikipedia is a huge resource.
yes.
I mean, even when it's even in spite of its issues, it's still there's still a lot of good there, and you can still learn a lot there.
Not denying it. I'm not denying it. There's uh, I actually think that Wikipedia can be credited to some extent with some education of people who just like otherwise might not be able to find information on certain things, um, and I like to think that perhaps it has um, brought some education in particular to like the third world. That'd be nice. That's a nice thought. I don't know if it's true.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's mostly just the internet generally, but the idea is when it comes to educational content, generally speaking, Wikipedia is pretty big on the internet. So yeah, so I'm not denying at all that
Well,
it has been. Uh, I'm not claiming that it has been useless. I'm
yeah.
not denying that it's been useful. I think it has been. I just think that the fact that we are where we are now in terms of information control um, means that Wikipedia is possibly more of a force for evil than for good at this point.
Well, what I like to say is, if you printed up the entire English Wikipedia into book form and tried to sell it as an encyclopedia, what would it cost?
It'd be a lot.
How many bookshelves would it take up?
Take up a lot, that's for sure. Of course,
I mean,
I
we,
think it
we
might
can
have been
remember how much
shrinking.
we can remember how much a standard set of World Book encyclopedias would take up and what those would cost.
Yeah, yeah, and it's been growing much more slowly lately, which is, I think, just such a huge missed opportunity. Because essentially the deletionists won in the old um, early 2000s controversy, early to mid 2000s controversy between the deletionists and the inclusionists. So that the deletionists were those who wanted articles to be basically deleted unless they were sufficiently note about topics that were sufficiently noteworthy. Whereas the inclusionists said, um, and I will quote a phrase of Jimmy Wales. I'll attribute this to him. Wiki is not paper. It's not, right. So it's you can let people write as much as they like. My view was, if an article can be maintained and responsibly written, then as long as it isn't like violating people's privacy or something, and perhaps a few other caveats of that sort, then you should just let people go to it, you know. So, yeah.
Well, there's the question of, is this person important enough that they deserve, to have an article about them, And I mean, not everybody's, I don't think
Well,
everybody's important enough,
you wouldn't be asking that question, though, if Wikipedia had a different approach to the whole idea of biographies. Like, if everyone could have a biography about themselves on Wikipedia, then it wouldn't be such a big deal to have a page on Wikipedia about yourself, as apparently it is. This is what I'm told. I'm not even really sure if it's true, but people act like it is anyway. Um, so yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So what is the profile of the typical Wikipedia writer?
Well, I can't tell you any longer. I don't know. Currently, I am so long gone from the community. I can tell you what it was like, and I can also tell you what my interactions with the Wikipedia community have been like recently. Because the strange thing is, it hasn't changed as far as that goes. In other words, I haven't actually been writing very much on Wikipedia. In fact, almost, I don't know if I've added it or even edited a sentence, more than one sentence in the last 10 years, right? But I nevertheless, obviously, for various reasons, have had interactions with Wikipedians. And they are the same arrogant SOBs that they were, um, basically, that the people who drove me out or who had a hand in driving me out were. So they tend to be, um, in my experience, uh, very peremptory. Like, they'll just say what the policy is. They're not open to a proper debate. They are typically insulting, um, and not just of me. A lot of people report this. Um, very very dogmatic when it comes to their particular interests. So they tend to, the people who are most active on Wikipedia tend to sit on Wikipedia pages and um, and make them speak with their voice, which is precisely contrary to the neutrality policy. And that's the thing that irritated me the most. It still does. Who the hell do these people think they are? Basically, is my reaction. And they drove out. Well, and now I'm talking about back in the day, but they drove out all kinds of people who are highly qualified, very smart, good writers, and who are totally willing to do a lot of hard work on Wikipedia. And there were just these jerks basically who drove them out. They were just insufferable. That's really the best word for them. Insufferable.
So it sounds like to me it's a community where
It,
one thing happens in communities, it's either the good drives out the bad or the bad drives out the good. And in this case, the bad drove out the good.
yep, I think that's right. And frankly, there's so many communities online where that has happened. Generally, there have to be some rules, right? And the rules have to be fairly enforced,
Yeah.
by adults. Um, by people with decent judgment. Um, and yeah, I've run back in the day. I've run, and even now actually I have a Bible study group that's extremely uh, polite and nice, but I think those people are very polite and nice by nature, um, or or by inculcation, whatever. At any rate, but yeah, but that's yeah. Back in the day, though, it was possible to conduct a really nice. Nice is the wrong word. It could still be pointed, still could be even slightly heated, not too heated, um, as long as the conversation was moderated. It just had to be fairly moderated. Um, so yeah, the MDOP, for all of its possible flaws, I suppose, was, as far as that was concerned, a reasonably good model. There wasn't too much that was just that was terribly um, over the top, outrageous. Um, so
Yeah. Well, I wonder too, though. If you step in and start to moderate Wikipedia, where do you stop moderating Wikipedia? It could just be he figured it's better just to let it moderate itself, and maybe that hasn't worked out. But
yeah, no,
I mean, maybe I
how
guess
would
one
you?
thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I have no idea how one would go about moderating Wikipedia. Yes,
I
that's a
guess does
fair point.
everybody on Wikipedia basically participate anonymously? So I mean, if you submit an article, do they know that that's Larry Sanger who submitted that article, or can you just hide behind a pseudonym and nobody knows who submitted it?
Of course, you can hide behind pseudonyms. That's always been the case, and that's still the case. One thing that a lot of people don't know about Wikipedia is that not only is anonymity permitted, anonymity is permitted um, for the administrators, even some of the top administrators. I checked it out one afternoon. I went through a list of all of their administrators at the time, and I could not find real names of the what are called check users in the community. These are people who can actually who have the authority to look up the IP address of people, um, which is a big deal in Wikipedia land. Yeah, that among the check users, I could find only about half. The names of only about half of the people, and that's only after looking. And a lot of people, they claim to have names, but there was no way to determine that there actually is such a person under that name. In other words, it might have been pseudonymous. So
Well, it's also possible you could have maybe one person running 50 different accounts.
of course, of course,
I
and that
mean,
was always the objection, right? I'm
yeah,
to
I
the
mean,
whole idea of voting.
when I took a journalism class, there was one thing they asked us. They said, "Would I be willing to have this article appear under my name?" And when you
Uh-huh.
have something when you have an article, when you have writing that does not have a name on it, nobody takes responsibility for it. So it
Right.
seems like to me you have a case where you can say something and nobody takes responsibility for it.
Yes.
I
And
know
there's
it happened a few years ago that Lawrence Southern, I think, sued Wikipedia, and she said, I want because she said there's stuff on here that's not true, and I want to know who's responsible for it.
yeah.
Who's telling these lies? Who's putting them out there? You know,
Yeah, no, there's I think that the Wikimedia Foundation eventually could be if the establishment allowed it to happen, but they won't, right? Because they like that situation. They like the situation that we're discussing, where anonymity and basically public lies are allowed. But in a just world, somebody would be able to sue the Wikimedia Foundation for supporting a system um, that allows uh, anonymous lies to be told without sufficient recourse. Now, their argument will be that well, of course there's recourse. We take defamation seriously, and the nonprofit, bears a legal burden to step in when necessary, and so we do. That's the argument. But the thing is, it's not really true. They don't step in the vast majority of cases where something can be proven. The only time when they're going to step in is when they think there is some danger of serious legal repercussions. That's when. And as a result, there's all kinds of slander, libel is the word actually, that is perpetrated on Wikipedia. And people really have no recourse, no way to answer, and it's a shame. It really is it's a damn shame. I don't know. At this point, I'm not sure what can be done about it. I do think that sufficiently motivated, wealthy people could work a change in Wikipedia, but I am not sure that there's anyone that is that motivated, that can't essentially be persuaded not to drop the case, or to make the case such that the status quo, the policy status quo, remains the same. It's just, again, there's too much at stake in the ability to color the reputations of people who are inconvenient to the regime.
Yeah, but also there's still the danger though of if the management at Wikipedia starts getting involved, then they're also going to start getting involved. Okay, China says censor this, we'll censor this. I mean, I'd like Wikipedia to stay a place where the inmates do run the asylum, but I definitely think there's still ways we can reform this.
Yes.
I mean, to me, the spirit of Wikipedia is still a very beautiful thing. I think this could have tremendous power for good. We just need to make some tweaks, but we don't want to tear down the whole building and start over. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
maybe
Yeah.
removing anonymity from the accounts would be an issue. Would be a solution.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I think a good start would be to require real names of people who are above a certain level of authority in the system. That would be a very good start. There's also some. There needs to be some system where real world identity is made a requirement for participating in certain votes on the website. Because without that, then it just becomes far too easy for fraudulent voting outcomes to be perpetrated on the
Yes.
wider community. Yeah.
Well, it also, and I wouldn't object. I mean, I wouldn't object, too, if Lauren Southern, for example, created her own account and said, "Okay, I'm going to write my Wikipedia page. Here it is." And granted, Lauren is probably going to paint herself in a more positive light than what's reality, but you might take that as a template and then write her biography. So at least what you have about Lauren Southern is mostly true.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's interesting that you should mention Lauren Southern. We follow each other on Twitter. Um,
I
I'm
only mention her because I know she said she sued Wikipedia,
because
and
she's such what?
she wanted to get some transparency on. She wanted to get some transparency on who writes this stuff.
All
She
right.
sued Wikipedia.
Oh, right, right, right. Okay. Yeah, I see. I see. I didn't know that. Interesting. Not surprising. A lot of people sue Wikipedia. um, and
And Wikipedia doesn't have anything to sue anyway. So yeah.
oh, you're wrong about that.
Well,
They are
I mean
loaded.
money. It's a nonprofit. Okay, well maybe
Um,
not.
they've got a lot of money. They collect tens of millions of dollars a year, and now their endowment, because that's what it is. It's like the size of a college's endowment at this point. It's getting to
Oh
be
wow.
really outrageous. Yeah. So yeah. Um, yeah, who knows? Maybe some sufficiently outraged wealthy person will, and I don't think Lauren Southern is wealthy, but somebody out
She's
there,
not.
yeah, very well could um, get out there and do some real damage to Wikipedia, and I wouldn't be crying any tears. So.
Are there any other reforms that you think could fix Wikipedia? I mean, I don't know. What about for example, if Wikipedia charged a basic subscription rate to everybody? Like, I'd pay $15 a year to use Wikipedia.
Why? What would be the point of that? I mean,
I
how
don't
would
know.
that fix anything?
Maybe it doesn't need the money. I guess.
It doesn't need the money, that's for sure.
Okay.
And if anything, that would tend to just exacerbate problems, I imagine, because as soon as you get money involved, then there are the people who decide how it is spent. That actually is already a problem in Wikipedia land. There's actually a lot of money that is spent on Wikipedia from um, the Wikimedia Foundation and other third party um, organizations.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah,
Well, it's like something Gary Hoover once said. He said, nonprofits are not designed to serve the public.
no, they're not. Not even close.
It's
Yeah,
but if you have something that's run as a business, it is designed to serve the public. So
yeah.
maybe that's part of the problem here.
Maybe I think a lot of nonprofits, frankly, are money laundering. There are ways of moving large amounts of money from one person to another, or one organization to another through various schemes,
Yeah.
um, and then giving wealthy people sinecures to draw upon. That's often what
Well,
how it ends up. Uh,
I was going to say that one of the problems of the nonprofits is a lot of them exist for the purpose of existing.
Perhaps. Well, that's what it looks like. I think there's more to it than that. I think that um, well, I won't get into it, but
Yeah.
suffice to say that there are a lot of nonprofits that are pursuing goals that are other than those which are they tell the public. Um, so yeah, we actually have the Knowledge Standards Foundation that I'm the president of now, um, are a real public spirited public service nonprofit, a bona fide nonprofit. We actually do work in the public interest, and we make it available for free, and we don't have any motivations other than what we have said. We're quite open about being all for freedom of speech, for preserving knowledge, um, for and other ancillary things. Um, and certainly, of course, for educating the world, making it easier for people to learn from the world's encyclopedias, essentially. So,
So you think you're going to try to correct some of the mistakes that Wikipedia's made then?
well, let's put it this way. I think that the collection of all the encyclopedias is greater than Wikipedia itself. Right. So the superset of all the encyclopedias is a more glorious thing than Wikipedia on its own. So what there needs to be is a way of collecting and aggregating all of that work in one place, making it as easily available as Wikipedia is. And that way, then it will become in time easy for people to find articles that, if they want a biased article, that match their biases, or if they want an unbiased article, it'll be relatively easy to find one that is in fact unbiased. But as long as the world's encyclopedias are scattered, um, and then the potential that collecting them together um, under one umbrella, so to speak, in one network, um, is lost. So don't misunderstand, though. I mean, the Knowledge Standards Foundation, with our project called the Encyclosphere, we're not wanting the Encyclosphere to
Oh yeah.
become an uh, uh, like the managers of all of the world's encyclopedias. Far from it. The best way to understand what we're doing is by analogy to the blogosphere. So basically, we're creating standards for encyclopedias that are similar to the standards, uh, the RSS standard made for blogs. Makes it easier to aggregate all the blogs, and has really ultimately made it harder for all of the blogs um, to be consolidated in one giant blogging platform, because it's just so easy to use the RSS format to just move from here to there. In the same way, um, because it's a technical standard, it's possible to um, uh, it's possible to enforce the idea of decentralization. It it's going to be very hard for anyone to capture the encyclosphere qua network, um, in the way that we are trying to set it up. All we're trying to do is make it to make a consistent technical standard for sharing the work that is on encyclopedias. That's it.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. So is there anything else you think can be done to reform Wikipedia or not?
Oh, I could I could go on a lot. There's nothing in particular that I want to say, frankly.
Yeah.
I'm talked out about Wikipedia, not with
Yeah.
you. I mean, but I have said no to very, very, very many interviews. Um, I I say I said yes to you only because I recognized your name, and
Yeah.
the Ayn Rand connection is interesting to me. You know,
Well, yeah.
I'm not
I've
a great
noticed.
fan of hers anymore, to be quite honest. But I still do have friends in that orbit. So,
Yeah, I really don't know. Uh, I really don't know what Jimmy's ideology is now. It's kind of funny to see how these people who used to be into Ayn Rand, where some of them have went. I know, for example, Jimmy's former girlfriend at the time has went completely and totally communist. You might know who I'm talking about. I
I
won't
I know who
I
you're
won't say her
talking
name.
about.
I won't say her name publicly, but
Yeah,
I
no,
will put it in
no
the
need,
chat.
no need. I know
I
her.
will put it in the chat.
Nice gal.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh,
uh, I met her a few times too, but
yeah.
um, totally communist though. You say really?
Yeah. She was. Yeah. Yeah. She was
I
also.
knew that she had definitely been leaning in a liberal direction. Anyway, she was like
Well,
the
she completely
19
bought into the COVID narrative.
really.
Completely bought into that. But anyway,
Yeah, well,
so
I'm not surprised
I really
there.
don't know where Jimmy. I really don't know where. Uh, I always found Jimmy to be a really smart guy. He was very well read, very well informed. Uh, Definitely knew a lot about a lot of different things. I mean, knew a lot
Yeah,
about economics, knew a lot about philosophy, knew a lot about technical stuff.
indeed.
Really could have really a guy who could have went in a lot of different fields and done well. He chose futures and options because that was probably the most lucrative. Uh,
Yes. Well, I think that really probably explains a lot. I think that uh, he he is he's able to make a lot of money
yeah,
living the life that he does with the let's just say the standards that he has
yeah.
now. Yeah.
And now, of course, when you've made this famous website, you can go hang out with these really cool people like Bono and stuff like that. It
Uh,
makes life a lot more interesting. But who do you think are some of the good guys?
there, but for the grace of God go I. I'm sure glad that
Yeah,
never happened to me. Jesus.
I've got to say
Sorry
too
about
though,
that.
who do you
Uh,
think are some of the good guys in the tech world right now? I mean, as far as free and open debate and free speech, I mean, it seems like Elon Musk is to a certain degree, but we've got a lot more villains than heroes, unfortunately.
I think Elon Musk is himself captured. He's part of it. He's he's part of the problem ultimately. Although he certainly puts on a good show, which is really the
Well,
point. But I'm not a fan of Musk. Um, let's see. Uh, well, Eron Wolf. He's the guy who has been funding the Knowledge Standards Foundation.
you're
He
on
also
Wolf.
funds, yeah, um, Eron. It's not Elon, it's Eron, Eron, Wolf, Wolf. And
Okay.
he lives in your town. And he's, as far as I can tell, he is quite sincere when it comes to uh, I should maybe in his case I should be more definite, but I have learned in my old age to be more uh, a little chary about leaping to conclusions. But let's put it this way: um, Iran and Futo has actually put his
Yeah.
money where his mouth is. He has actually funded a lot of uh, small, up and coming, but potentially important projects, and he's surrounded himself, again, as far as I can tell, with people who really do care about liberty. Um, and their the main concern is, uh, well, I would call it a trifecta. I think the first and most important thing is privacy for them. Free speech is maybe a close second. Um, and I also do think that they generally support um, a third aspect of technical freedom, which is autonomy, basically your ability to control the software and not be controlled by the software. Um, and but I think to a certain extent that just falls out as a consequence of the well of
Yeah, yeah. It seems,
the
it seems
technological.
like we're,
Yeah,
yeah, I didn't want to get on this. You were involved with the MDOP and objectivism. Maybe you went to one of David Kelly's seminars. I don't know. But, so what happened there?
yeah. I never. Uh,
You apparently have broken
I
up
don't.
with
I
Ayn
think
Rand.
I sat in a room with David Kelly once in one seminar.
Okay.
I can't say that I remember very much about it, but at one point, yeah, he struck me as being more reasonable and so forth, um, and not as dogmatic and quite frankly irrational as some of the of Ayn Rand's followers struck me as being at the time. But so to make a long story short, um, over the years, especially after I got married, I discovered that the reason why I care about other people is not because of my self-interest, but because of their interests, because I care about their interests. Um, and the one thing that really changed my perspective about Ayn Rand, even before I found Jesus, which I did, is that, and this happened long before that, like over 10 years before that, is really had to do with my getting married and having children. It's like I realized that I'd die for these people for sure. Yeah, if I had to, I would. Um, and well, what does that mean? That means I'm not, therefore, in my actions toward them, I am not um, acting on my own behalf, am I? I'm acting on their behalf. There's all kinds of things I do for my boys and for my wife that I do for them and not for me in any way, shape, or form. Um, so um, that philosophical disagreement had a lot to do with it. I'll tell you this: I was never an objectivist per se. I never was. I was always um, a methodological skeptic, and I was deeply devoted to reason above all. That's actually the thing that drew me to objectivism in the first place. The whole idea that this was a philosophy that is, in fact, devoted to reason and that stood firm against the um, irrational tendencies in modern philosophy. Now, I got a PhD in philosophy, so I became extremely well acquainted um, with those precise tendencies, um, and to a great extent, I think that the 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 Randian um, uh, critique of the irrationalism of modern philosophy is a little off base. Um, that there are a lot of people who are not devotees of Ayn Rand who who will defend reason and realism and even capitalism, uh, you know, and in other words, they're I would just say, relatively decent sorts of non-left wing, rational sorts of people. There's a lot of those sorts of people in academia. Um, they maybe not as many as there used to be, because the left has driven them out. But even among the left, there's still people who are like devoted to reason as far as that can take you. They obviously are going to have some disagreements. They're going to have some contradictions to face when it comes to their socio-political views. But at any rate, yeah. Then later on, as I say, I was a methodological skeptic. I still am to a great extent. But at a certain point, I ended up reading the Bible from cover to cover. Now, this was not because, like, I at the time was seriously thinking that God exists or anything. I wasn't really exploring in that direction. Although I will say that without getting into the details, that it was I had been softened up for this, but I was amazed that I just didn't understand at how coherent and how deep the Bible is. It's much more plausible and capable of withstanding scrutiny than I understood. I just didn't understand that. I didn't understand the whole field of theology to a great extent. One of the missions of theology is to make faith, and when I say faith, what I should say is doctrine, because when a devotee of Ayn Rand hears the word faith, what they think that means is blind faith just to I don't know, believe just because, not for any good reasons, even in spite of reasons to the contrary. No, I'm just talking about doctrine. And the mission of theology is to articulate doctrine, or what is believed by, in believers of the Bible, essentially. Um, it's it defends what that is. It characterizes what it is, and makes an attempt to say why it is true to a certain extent. Let's put it that way. There's a lot that's in the Bible that is never defended as such, and you can't get to it a priori through reasoning. You can get to it through a certain kind of argument, but it ultimately involves saying, well, the God of the universe is responsible for this text, and that we have independent reasons for believing that, and therefore we can trust what it says on this other matter about which we have no other evidence whatsoever. So anyway, yeah, and that happened in 2020. I've read the Bible 4 times since then. I'm working on a 5th. I've become a serious student. And as I say, the one thing that was a hard pill for me to swallow was the abandonment of methodological skepticism, at least when it came to issues of doctrine. But even there, one way in which I differ from a lot of Christians, doesn't have to be, but and certainly not all Christians, but one way is I do not shrink from asking questions at all. So like I remember all of my skeptical objections. I'm actually writing a book um, called God Exists, the case for a philosophical case for the Christian God. And it constitutes a very, very long, extended argument against my former self, essentially. Um, and I'm not scared of any question, basically, at this point. The thing that was so amazing to me when I read the Bible, I'll just leave it at this. The thing that was so amazing to me is that the more that I investigated it and tried to understand it on its own terms, the more it actually I could understand how rational people could actually believe it. I didn't understand that before at all. So there's my
Yeah, well,
testimony for you.
and actually, my first question was, well, if he's quit objectivism, who pissed him off? But maybe no, maybe it wasn't anybody. But anyway, it's been great talking with you. Do you have anything else you want to say before we go?
Yeah, okay, I'll say this. It would be great if any developer out there, anyone who's interested in preserving knowledge, you don't have to be a Christian to join the organization, of course, and to contribute your code to the effort. But there's a lot to do to organize the world's knowledge and to keep it free, to keep it aggregated. We do not yet have an encyclopedia of objectivism. Somebody could make some ZWE files out of some objectivist encyclopedia. There must be one or two out there, right? I'm pretty sure there are. Yeah, as ZWE, I mean, it stands for zipped wiki, and that's the standard file format, and that would be the thing to do. But there's a lot more. There's a lot more that needs to be done, and people would be very welcome. We're very easygoing. We're non-controlling, um, and we're always delighted to have new people. So, and there's a weekly meeting Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. In which it's like a software stand-up meeting, but there's more to it than that, and it's not just developers who are there giving reports essentially on what they've done, and you can just listen into the reports. That's fine. For some reason, people find it interesting, but yeah, we're doing good work, I think, preserving knowledge, keeping it free. So.
Yeah, well, that's great. Okay, well, thank you very much, Larry. It's been a good having you on here, and hopefully hopefully maybe we'll have a better Wikipedia in the future. And I'd certainly be willing to hear from Jimmy on all this if he ever wants to come on. I'm sure Jimmy will be an interesting conversation no matter what we talk about. He's a smart guy with he knows a lot about a lot of different things, and so yeah, thank you very much. Please buy my novel, Escape from the Village. Subscribe to the channel, like the video. Hopefully, my voice will be back soon. I'm Chris Baker, and we're out.